for one, I think growing corn is easy, and there's few crops that are as rewarding as growing corn, because for planting a small seed, you get this big tall plant. It's beautiful. You can walk through it. It sings in the wind, and then harvesting is a very rewarding thing of these large ears. And then because we have livestock here, we can cut stalks and feed it to our sheep, and they love it. Or the world over, people use the corn stalks as bedding because they can't just go buy a straw bale. So all that biomass is really useful. And it's just a beautiful plant to watch. The bees, honeybees, and bumblebees love gathering the pollen. Even though it's a wind-pollinated plant, that doesn't stop bees from gathering corn pollen. And yeah, I just see it as rewarding. You can literally watch it grow on a hot summer day.
Hey Dad, what are you up to?
I'm planting sweet corn.
What would one do if they don't have a fancy machine like that?
Well, the old way would be, let me empty my seed out of here. How about we'll do this? You would use a hoe like this. My favorite is what's called a Warren hoe, or a furrowing hoe. But if you don't have one of those, and I'm going to use this to hold up my seed planter. This is the universal farming tool all over the world. If you ever get to travel, this would be the only farm tool you'd really need. And it's called an eye hoe because somebody thought that looked like an eye. It's just a stick and a piece of metal. So what you would do is make a furrow. So I'll go ahead and corn, the plants get pretty big. This is a sweet corn called Xanadu, and so we're growing it for seed. So all these beds I planted already, and we'll get to eat some, but we're going to let most of it go to seed to share with you all. And it's a really nice bicolor sweet corn that my friend Jonathan Spiro bred. And bicolor, that's when it's yellow and white at the eating stage. So the key with corn is you want to plant it twice as deep as it is long, but you can actually plant it deeper because corn is a grass. So it's what's called a monocot, one cotyledon. So it just has, if this is the surface of the soil, that one leaf has a pretty easy time pushing up. So if you plant it a little on the deeper side, like 1 to 2 inches, then it's rooted down there where there's more likely to be moisture. And the other reason for that is because, like when I walked up here a little while ago, there was a couple stellar jays on the fence, and I think they were looking out for corn I may have spilled or that didn't get covered properly. So by having the seed planted deeper, it can root down there and hold on better, because so when a bird, a crow, or a jay or something tries to tug on that first leaf, that they can't pull it out, because that's what they do. They want to like pull it out and then eat the seed. They don't care about the leaves. So I'm going to use my Warren hoe, and instead of making a furrow like that, I'm going to turn it 45 degrees and just cut myself a little furrow. Well, not a little furrow, kind of as deep as I can go, really. And, oops. I'm not going to go the whole row. I'll just go down a little bit, and then I can show you all what I'm up to. So there's that. Then we'll grab some seed. And corn, eventually, you want, if the plants are going to get 6 feet tall, which they will, you need to have it spaced out about a foot. And one thing about corn is that it's a heavy feeding crop. So I spread composted manure in here as I was preparing the beds. And for a bed like this is 80 feet. I probably use the equivalent of 3 wheelbarrow loads to put it in context. I use the tractor, but you really do need to feed corn. If you don't, it can't do all that growth, because imagine, like, where's that plant coming from? Some of it's photosynthesis, but it's a lot the organic matter and the water. So corn likes water too. Once it's established, it can handle hot temperatures and some drought, but those are important considerations before you get to the point of planting, is make sure you fertilize. And you can see all the organic matter on the surface here. We had a cover crop growing here that was about 3 feet high. So I mowed that, tilled it in. So we got all that organic matter in that cover crop, included nitrogen-fixing plants like vetch, fava beans, and winter peas. And so those are fixing nitrogen from the air and the soil. And you really got to think ahead about how are you feeding these crops that want a lot of fertility. So not only did I do the cover crop, we had the compost. So we want an abundant crop, and it really pays off to think ahead like that. So now I'm going to plant it, and you know, a walk behind cedar is a good investment if you're doing a larger scale, but you can see I can do this pretty quick. So even though I only want the plants about once every foot, I'm going to seed them about 1 every 6 inches in case some of it doesn't come up or birds. You can always come back and thin later, which means pull the plants out. So I'll wait till they're about 4 or 5 inches and then do the thinning process. But you can see, you know, this moves along at a pretty good clip. And you can see if I'm down in that furrow that once I cover it up, and maybe I'll just demonstrate it first by hand. I'll leave my bag where I left off. You know, that plant, so here my finger is at the seed as I cover it, you know, I'm that deep, 2 inches. So you can use the hoe, I'll demonstrate the rest with the hoe to cover it, and this is why this is such a useful tool, is not only can you create your furrow, you can cover it. When it's time to weed, I can come back and weed. Another thing that you're going to want to do with corn is what's called hilling, because corn can make these aerial roots up the stem, and if you mound soil higher up, which is you're weeding at the same time, then it helps the plant from lodging, blowing over in the wind. So we can go look at some corn I already have growing, and it's not high enough to hill yet, but you'll get the idea when we look at it. Another thing about growing sweet corn in particular is you want to grow in successions. That means planting it like every 2 to 3 weeks so that you have a continual supply. So this is some corn that I planted probably the beginning of May, close to the beginning of May, and you can see the plants here. They're a couple inches tall. I had a little bit of weeding in here, but you can see there's still a few weeds. You know, and there's another one here, another one here. And just for science purposes, I'm going to look and see, you know, how deep is this planted? And that's a weed, a piece of grass growing there. I'm not going to totally pull it out, but one thing about corn that it tends to make like a taproot. So like as I'm tugging on it, I can't quite get it, but most of its root system is fibrous there. And you can see the kernel right there by my fingertip. And I mentioned before, planting it deep enough to where it's really anchored in there. So if a bird comes along and tries to pull this out, it can't. And one of the more disappointing things when you're growing corn is you have this beautiful rows of corn sprouting like this, and it's happened to me more times than I care to relate. I come along and I see dry, shriveled tops where birds have pulled it up to try and get at the kernel down there, because that's the part they want. So when this corn's a little bit higher, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called hilling. I'm going to mound soil up around the stalk, you know, and leave the leaves up there, and that again helps it with being down there where the roots are with moisture, but also with resisting lodging, which is the term we use for when the wind blows it over. And as I mentioned, birds, here's evidence right here. Here's some, you know, bird poop. So they're in here, and they know, they're smart. You know, they survived through doing this. And if you look over here, look at these stalks. See how that one's missing the leaf? So here's a case in point. A bird snipped that off, and look at this one is now, the kernel's even exposed. So they maybe even were in here digging like a chicken. So at the baby stage, it's vulnerable. Once it gets growing, it's tough. And you look how people all around the world grow corn, particularly here in Mesoamerica, as their staple food, I'm thinking in particular in Mexico, Central America, and South America. But here in the U.S., it's the number one acreage plant that farmers grow. So there's corn. So this is a 80-day corn, 80, 85 days. So you can think if I planted at the beginning of May, let's just round up to 90 days. Then by the beginning of August, we'll be harvesting corn here. And then we're just looking at, I was planting now, it's now the end of May. So then that will be happening later. And then I'll come through sometime around the summer solstice and plant another wave. And here in our climate, I find we can't really plant after July 1st. We don't have enough. But doing those 3 waves ensures a steady supply of sweet corn. And so you're going to want to do that not just for corn, but other crops like beans to have successions. So that's where you become a more advanced gardener as you're thinking ahead. And hopefully you look at your calendar and you just put on there like, hey, plant another wave of sweet corn. And that's a good way to remind yourself. And nothing like having fresh sweet corn. My favorite way to eat it, honestly, is just walk out in the corn patch and eat it raw right there. And not enough people do that. But if you have good fresh corn, that's the best way. Yeah.